you guys believe it's been like almost a full year? It's crazy. And if you kind of look back on the very beginning, just how much the process has changed for you and kind of just how much it's opened your eyes up about the election, I think it's
crazy.
Yeah.
Right? But now that we're getting into, I mean, now that there's been the pandemic, where every California voter will be sent a mail ballot, who's going to mail their ballot and who's going to say, I'm going to the polls, it's my first time voting, or I've always gone to the polls?
I'll probably mail mine.
I'll probably mail mine too.
Unless I forget, then I'll go and drop it off. But I'm planning on mailing, yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Matan.
I mean, mine's just absentee. I mean, obviously, like, I'm out of state and stuff, but...
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I'm just going to be doing absentee. You know, although, like, I would like to go to the polls normally, you know, I figure it doesn't matter. I'll do it next time. So. Oh, hopefully.
Well, and I think that the fact is that there's been all these concerns about the mail ballots of, can we trust the post office? I think in the primary, there was an article that I had read that said, I think like 1.5% of the mail ballots were rejected in the primary. And 70%, I think, was because there were late ballots. And the big concern is like the signatures are not matching. And I think now every county in California is required to contact you if your signature is missing or if it doesn't match. But do you guys have any concerns about the mail ballots? And if so, what are some of those concerns?
I mean, just today there was a news report, in Luzerne County, where an amount of military votes that were for Trump were discarded, and they were shipped in as mail. And this was like reported, the report came out today and was released by U.S. Attorney David Freed. So, I mean, there's already instances where mail-in voting isn't working. There's tons of cases over the past 4 years where there are proven instances of voter fraud. According to the Heritage Foundation's database, in the past 4 years, there have been over 1,300 proven instances of voter fraud. So just stuff like that. Like, there's so many cases that tell me that it's not reliable if we do like nationwide or statewide required mail-in voting.
Anyone want to rebut that or agree with him?
I know that we did, because in my class, I'm taking Intro to Political Science this year, and I haven't really been that much of a political person before, but I know that we're talking about the mail-in ballots now, and we actually had like read an article about it. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I honestly think that mail-in voting might be one of our only options for a safe voting. And I do get that, like, it could be like doing it. I know that like we've done it for a while. I remember reading that we've done mail-in voting, absentee voting for a while, but I know that doing it at such a large scale can be it can have its difficulties, and there could be some voter fraud. And I think that just recently, I've started seeing like Instagram posts of how to do it safely and how to do it effectively. But up to like a couple like weeks like earlier, I haven't really seen. I've only seen on like the media there were like opinions, like the two parties, like, oh, it's good, it's bad, we have to do this, we have to do that. But I've never. I think that we need to see like more resources, like. Whether that be commercials or like Instagram ads of like telling people how to do it correctly, because it's one of our only options this year. And I think that that's also like kind of dangerous, because a lot of people aren't, I don't want to say not responsible voters, but this adds like a lot more responsibility onto the voters, and like having them mail it in correctly and having them do it right, just because it's different than what we've done before. So I know that there can be like a lot of complications to it.
Well, and that brings up a good point, Chelsea, because there was something that I read that had said that I think with the majority, or maybe not the majority, but there was a high number of young voters' mail ballots that had been rejected. And I think that's because they say that with the younger voters, it's the first time voting. You don't often use your signatures. You don't mail a lot of things. It's just the whole new process to it. So with the younger voters, even though they would probably think, well, younger voters will do mail ballots because it's more convenient, it's still the procedures of doing it, I think, is still something new and fresh. Well, maybe not fresh, but just new because you've never done it before.
Yeah, that's like my main concern about it. I just feel like from what I've seen, I haven't seen much, but what I've seen, it's just like the two parties like arguing each other, and like a lot of yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like interesting to see whatever, but I'd rather know like useful information to like how to get my ballot in on time and how to make sure that my ballot is counted, rather than to see like the two parties argue like they always do, I guess.
Diego, Madeline, or hey, Mithil.
Hello.
We're talking about mail ballot issues and concerns.
Okay.
And Matan believes that there's voter fraud. Charles C. is concerned that there could be some issues with it, but it is the safest issue.
I just want to say, for me at least, voter fraud isn't my main issue with the mail-in voting. I think my main concern is that just across the board, doesn't matter what party it is. I'm nervous that votes just won't be counted correctly or etc. So, but I know that they said that we probably won't get the results of the election until later than usual because it'll take time to get all of them in and count them all. But I do know that like at least San Diego County, at least, I don't know if it's across California, but the polls are open for 4 days instead of just one. So that gives people a chance to go in the 31st through the 3rd and turn in their mail ballot. And I know when I turned my mail ballot in on the primary, they did check my signature before I turned it in at the polls. So I know that if you go and turn it in, that they should check your signature so your vote will be counted. It is a little iffy if you mail it because mistakes can happen, and with the whole postal service stuff going on, the time that it'll take to get ballots and so it is a really big issue. However, for me, I don't think voter fraud is the main the thing that we should really be concerned about mostly. I think it should just be whether votes will be counted or not and if the system will work. So that's my piece.
Diego or Mithil?
Okay, well, I just like personally, I just don't think I can see another way of doing it that's like still safe with the COVID guidelines. While I don't think voting by mail is or universal voting by mail is ideal. Again, I just think it's something that we necessarily have to do. If I'm wrong about that, then I'd love to find another alternative. So yeah, that's it.
I think what I'd say is that.
Oh, sorry, just a second. Diego, are you going to, and kind of like what Madeline had brought up, are you guys going to mail your actual ballot, or are you guys going to drop it off at a polling place, a mail drop-off location, someone to actually check to make sure, is my vote good to go?
Yeah, so, one of the best things about having a mail-in ballot is you can drop it off at any polling station, not just the one that you're assigned to. So I think that's an easier option for me. While for the primary, my dad's ballot, we mailed that in. I don't think he'll mind if we all go and drop it off there. So yeah, I think I will be dropping it off.
So sorry, Mithil, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No worries. I think it's, I'm not terribly worried about voter fraud as an issue, as I think it's a lot of effort to actually commit voter fraud that I don't think people are going to do, because to do it once, you have to go through the trouble of making a fake identity and then going and filling out all these forms, getting it requested, and then you have to pay to mail it as well. So
not to interrupt, but I just want to include one thing. I read something in NPR that in the last I don't know, 20 something years, maybe 30, the percentage of voter fraud within mail voting is, I think 0.000, maybe another 0.6% of all of the mail ballots that have been casted, I believe. So just
It's
wanted to put that
probably
in there.
much easier to commit voter fraud in person than it is by mail. Like, you could just show up and say, hey, I'm this person, and if there isn't a voter ID law per se, then you could probably do it and just show up to multiple voting places, and you might be able to pull it off depending on how good you are at talking. It's much simpler than going through the effort of like requesting a mail-in ballot and then, or forging a mail-in ballot too, could be another way, but all of that's just much more complicated than necessary.
Do you have any concerns about the mail ballots?
I think it's whether or not people will actually send it and do them. And so if people will be receiving them on time, and then there's probably going to be a bit of a political football in that case about who's responsible for what. Everybody's going to be blaming each other for certain votes, and then nobody will, if it goes one way, they won't concede the election, or that type of thing that'll happen because there are going to be allegations on both sides. So I don't think there's. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What did you say, Mathil?
No, I was just gonna. What was your question?
I was just gonna say, is like with that, like maybe some people aren't comfortable with the mail ballots, but then they're not comfortable going to the polls. So are we going to see fewer people vote because they just don't trust the system, and for their health they don't want to go?
Probably. I don't think there are going to be people that are going to say, well, what one guy does 3,000 miles away probably isn't worth my health and worth catching coronavirus, whatever that may entail. So I don't think there will be a portion of the population, especially the elderly voters, that probably won't go out and vote. And they probably may or may not do voting by mail either, given that it's not exactly the most intuitive or simple system, depending on the state that you're in.
I mean, like, just to respond to like everything that's been like said, and Mithil, you weren't here when I said this, but like in the past 4 years, it was said that there were over 1,300 proven cases of voter fraud, according to the Heritage Foundation. And this is just proven. That means like there could be way more unproven ones. And also, like, in my mind, like voter fraud and like all the troubles with mail-in voting, that doesn't include simply fraud. It includes like missing ballots, because like according to the Federal Election Assistance Commission, in the last 4 elections, around 30 million mail-in ballots have gone missing. And like, in addition to that, like just to address, you guys were saying that it's like the only safe way is to vote by mail or something along that lines. I mean, I think like if we can have thousands of protests where everybody's like coming together in such like closed spaces, some not even wearing masks, I feel like we could vote in person. And also Democrats, mainly Biden, have been saying that like they would listen to what Fauci is saying in regards to in-person voting. And Fauci has come out and said that in-person voting is completely okay with necessary distancing, masks and stuff, and et cetera. Like, I just, yeah.
I just want to point out to you, Matan, that every single thing you said was a logical fallacy.
In what sense, Mithil? In what sense?
In that it doesn't logically hold. You're creating generalizations that aren't sound. So you're saying, well, there are 1,300, so there must be more. That's not exactly a proven fact.
I said there could be more, not must be more.
There could be more.
I was giving you a fact that was that occurred in the past couple of years, and that just says that if this has happened in this amount of time, there is probable cause to be suspect or skeptical of mail-in voting now, especially since it's going to be state mandated.
Personally, I mean, there's a giant amount of people, especially in the state of California, that I mail every single year, and it hasn't been an issue until now. And I really think that one of the main reasons that people are pushing the voter fraud thing right now is because it's going to be an excuse if there is a loss. It's going to be an excuse to do a recount, etc., and to make a whole hubbub about it. And I know that Trump is already preparing a legal team to fight if he loses, and so I think that all of what Okay, both are then. Both are preparing a legal team to fight. So what I really think it is I don't think either side wants to lose. It's an either side thing. It's not a one side thing. I don't think that either side wants to lose, and so they're making such a big deal about voter fraud, etc., because they are scared of that. But what I think that's really going to do is it's going to discourage people to actually go vote, because they're going to think things like, oh, my vote isn't even going to matter, it's not even going to count, etc. So I think this whole idea of mail-in voting being extremely toxic and fraud and just being brought up now is really just a political move, and I think it's toxic, and I think it's going to hurt the election on both sides and possibly the democracy as well.
I mean, some of what you're saying is true, but I agree with you that it's been brought up to light in the mainstream issue. Like it's become like a huge topic because of the virus, and it's like now it's going to be like state mandated. But I disagree with what you were saying before, that it's not been a topic that's been talked about. I've heard multiple and countless news reports, even as far as it goes back to 2008, where elected officials were talking about how risky mail-in voting is, and like people like Jerry Nadler and Obama spoke of the high risk of fraud in mail-in voting, and Obama even spoke about tearing down the USPS due to the success of private industry. These are all points that are worth addressing, and people have talked about it before, but just because the media hasn't reported about it in such a high sense as they are now, that doesn't mean that it hasn't been an issue. And like I said, like past couple elections have been subject to this fraud or risks of disappearing.
What I meant, I didn't mean that it hasn't been an issue. I meant that it's not been an issue to, I'd say, mostly voters. I don't really think it's been brought to the attention of voters as much as it has now, is my point. And so what I'm trying to say is that I think it's being brought to the attention of voters so much now, because what's going to happen, regardless of who loses, is there's going to be a legal battle, regardless if it's right, that's going to argue whether there was fraud or you know what I mean? And like I said, I think for our system, that's extremely toxic, and it could harm the democracy itself. I wasn't trying to say that it's never been an issue before, because it's obviously been an issue, but